Old fart. Title: Old fart. The calendar on the damp basement wall, peeling at the corners, declared Saturday, May 18, 2025. Leslie, 74 years old, a man whose bones felt like ancient, sun-baked driftwood, squinted at the date. Another day, another opportunity. His stomach gurgled, a familiar prelude to his unique talent, a gift he had honed into an art form. He was a solitary figure, his world confined to the shadowy corners of his mind and the dingy confines of his subterranean lair. Religion offered no comfort, no solace for a man whose only consistent companion was the rumbling in his gut. He shuffled upstairs, the floorboards groaning under his weight, each step a protest. The world above ground, bathed in the pale morning light, felt alien. His target today, Mrs. Henderson's Bakery, a small establishment that always smelled of cinnamon and despair. Leslie didn't care for cinnamon. He cared for the crisp bills in the till. He felt a familiar pressure building, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through his very core. He reached the bakery, the bell above the door jingling a cheerful, ironic welcome. Mrs. Henderson, a woman whose face resembled a well-kneaded dough, looked up from arranging a tray of croissants. "Morning, Leslie," she chirped, her voice cloyingly sweet. "The usual." Leslie just grunted, his eyes scanning the sparse clientele. A young mother, pushing a stroller, browsed the bread aisle. A teenager, hunched over his phone, waited for a coffee. Perfect. He positioned himself strategically near the counter, took a deep, deliberate breath, and squeezed. His buttocks clenched, muscles he rarely used straining with ancient effort. A low, guttural growl began, building in intensity, a sound like a distressed foghorn echoing in a cavern, then a series of sharp, percussive brr-brr pop-pop erupted from his backside. The air around him shimmered, thick and viscous, with a stench that defied description, a toxic blend of rotten eggs, stale cabbage, and something vaguely metallic, like old pennies dissolved in bile. It wasn't just a smell, it was a physical force. The young mother swayed, her hand flying to her nose, her eyes glazing over. The teenager dropped his phone, his head lolling. Mrs. Henderson, mid-reach for a pastry bag, froze, her face turning a sickly green before her knees buckled. All three crumpled to the pristine tiled floor, unconscious. Leslie watched them fall, a faint, detached satisfaction curling his lips. The gas itself, for reasons unknown, never affected him. He was immune to his own weapon. He moved with surprising speed for a man his age, his movements jerky but efficient. His hands, gnarled and spotted, swept across the counter, snatching the entire cash drawer. He tucked it under his arm, the metal cold against his thin shirt. The scent still hung heavy, a lingering miasma, but he was already out the door. He ran, or rather, he shuffled at a pace that only he considered a sprint. Each strained step produced another muffled, resonant thwack pfft, a small, residual explosion of gas that propelled him forward, left, then right, then left again. He imagined himself a blur, a phantom wind, though in reality, a brisk walk would have easily outpaced him. The stolen cash drawer clattered against his side as he lumbered down the street, a triumphant, if slow, bandit. Back in his basement, the stolen goods joined a growing collection of trinkets, canned food, and forgotten treasures. He sorted the money, his fingers counting out the bills, a small pile of ill-gotten gains. Loneliness was a constant hum, a low thrum beneath his skin, but these moments, these successful raids, offered a fleeting sense of purpose. A few days later, the bus ride offered a new prospect. Leslie sat near the back, observing. His eyes, keen despite their age, landed on a man in the middle of the bus, absorbed in a laptop. The man, 38, with neat, dark hair and an air of quiet concentration, had a small, expensive-looking bag beside him. Jigga Bogo, the nameplate on his ID badge read. A flash of silver caught Leslie's eye, a money clip peeking from Jigga's front pocket. Easy pickings. The bus hummed along, a captive audience. Leslie waited for the perfect moment. The bus stopped at a light, the engine idling, the air still. He braced himself, a familiar pressure building. This one would be a masterpiece. He squeezed, focusing every ounce of his aged strength. The sound began as a low growl, escalating into a violent, ripping brr-brr pop-pop swoosh that vibrated the very windows. The bus filled instantly with a suffocating, putrid cloud, a stench so potent it felt like acid on the tongue. Passengers gasped, clutched their throats, their faces contorting in horror. The driver swayed, his head hitting the steering wheel with a dull thud. A woman across the aisle screamed, then slumped forward. The entire bus erupted into a chorus of retches and groans before silence descended, broken only by the gentle rocking of the bus. All eyes were closed, all bodies limp. All. Save for one. Jigger Bogo's head snapped back, his eyes rolling dramatically. He let out a theatrical groan, his body slumping in his seat. His laptop, however, remained clutched in one hand, the money clip still secure. Earlier that morning, a strange premonition, coupled with a lingering suspicion about the rash of fainting incidents in local shops, had prompted Jigger to take an experimental antitoxin tablet he'd been developing in his lab. It was designed to counteract airborne neurotoxins, and while he hadn't anticipated this particular application, it seemed to be working. The smell was still horrendous, a vile assault on his senses, but his mind remained clear, his muscles responsive. Leslie, oblivious, saw only another victim. He shuffled over, his breath coming in short, wheezing gasps, a faint *PFFFT* escaping with each exertion. He reached for the laptop, then the money clip. Jigger, with a final, exaggerated shudder, let go. The old man snatched them both, a triumphant glint in his rheumy eyes. Ha! Leslie wheezed, a dry, rasping sound. Old fart still got it. He turned, lumbering towards the bus door, the stolen goods tucked under his arm. Jigger, his eyes now open just a sliver, watched him go. A slow, cold fury began to simmer. So, it was him. The local legend of the stench thief wasn't a legend at all. It was this decrepit, reeking old man. Leslie stumbled off the bus, the money and laptop heavy in his grasp. He started his usual sprint home, a series of uneven, fart-punctuated shuffles. Thwack PFFFT, thwack PFFFT, the air behind him rippled with small, noxious clouds. Jigger, waiting until Leslie was a block ahead, slipped off the bus. He walked, a brisk, determined stride, easily maintaining the distance. Leslie, convinced he was a blur, never once looked back. Jigger watched the old man disappear into a residential street, then into the basement entrance of a rundown house. The pieces clicked into place. Jigger returned to his lab, a sterile, humming sanctuary filled with beakers, centrifuges, and blinking lights. He worked with a focused intensity, his mind racing. The tablet he'd taken that morning, a preliminary formulation, had merely blocked the neurotoxic effects. What was needed was a counter-agent, something that would neutralize the source. He analyzed the air samples he'd discreetly collected from the bus. The composition was unique, a complex blend of sulfur compounds and volatile organic molecules. Hours blurred into a singular purpose. He synthesized, tested, refined. By late evening, a small, crystalline tablet, no bigger than an aspirin, sat in a petri dish. His anti-flatulence cure. The next morning, under the cover of pre-dawn twilight, Jigger approached Leslie's house. The basement window was slightly ajar, a faint, lingering odor wafting out. Jigger, a skilled lockpicker from his days as a curious teenager, made quick work of the old, rusty lock. He slipped inside, the air thick with the faint, stale scent of past gaseous eruptions. On a rickety table, a plate of half-eaten stew sat covered with a tea towel. Leslie's dinner, left for later. Perfect. Jigger carefully unwrapped the stew, his nose wrinkling at the smell of overcooked vegetables and cheap meat. He crushed the tablet into a fine powder between two spatulas, then sprinkled it meticulously over the stew, stirring it in with a clean stirring rod until it was completely dissolved and invisible. He covered the plate again, leaving no trace of his intrusion. He left as silently as he had come, the basement door clicking shut behind him. Later that day, Leslie returned to his basement lair, his stomach rumbling. He uncovered the stew, a faint whiff of something different in the air. He shrugged, his hunger overriding any suspicion. He shoveled the lukewarm stew into his mouth, chewing slowly. It tasted odd, a subtle metallic tang, a faint bitterness beneath the familiar blandness. Weird, he mumbled to himself, swallowing the last spoonful. Still good, though. The next day, a new ambition seized Leslie. He wanted more than just small change and laptops. He craved a haul, a grand score that would set him up for life. The True Bank, a formidable stone edifice downtown, beckoned. He imagined the vault, overflowing with crisp $100 bills. This would be his masterpiece. He arrived at the bank, his heart thumping with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The place hummed with activity, tellers bustling, customers waiting. He saw the vault door, a massive, impenetrable circle of steel. He took a deep breath, braced himself, and squeezed his buttocks with all his might. The familiar pressure built, the deep, guttural rumble started. Then fizzled. A tiny, almost inaudible *PFFFT* escaped, a whisper of gas, barely enough to ruffle a feather. The air remained clear, odorless. Leslie's eyes widened in disbelief. He tried again, straining, his face reddening with effort. Another pathetic *PFFFT. Nothing. The grand symphony of his flatulence, his weapon, his superpower, had been reduced to a pathetic squeak. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at his skin. He squeezed, he pushed, he grunted, but his body stubbornly refused to unleash its usual devastating power. Only small, insignificant puffs emerged, each one a testament to his impotence. Looking for something, Leslie. A voice, calm and even, cut through his growing despair. Leslie spun around, his eyes locking onto Jigger Bogo. Jigger stood there, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips, the laptop Leslie had stolen from him now tucked securely under his arm. What do you mean? Leslie stammered, his voice thin, reedy. Your special talent, Jigger explained, his voice laced with a quiet satisfaction. It's gone. Neutralized. You ate my little creation, didn't you? The stew. Leslie's jaw dropped. You did this. I did, Jigger confirmed, stepping closer. And before you start denying anything, I know what you've been doing, Leslie. The fainting spells, in every small shop in the neighborhood. The bus incident. I saw you. I followed you home. I know about your little basement hideout. Leslie felt a cold dread seep into his bones. His eyes darted around the busy bank, suddenly feeling exposed, vulnerable. I don't know what you're talking about, he mumbled, a weak denial. It's over, Leslie, Jigger stated, his voice firm. Your game is done. The words hit Leslie like a physical blow. His shoulders slumped. The grand heist, the life of luxury, all of it evaporated like mist. He felt tears welling in his eyes, hot and unexpected. He turned and shuffled out of the bank, his head down, the weight of his 74 years suddenly crushing. Each step was heavy, devoid of his usual gaseous propulsion. The tears streamed down his weathered cheeks, blurring the busy street into a watercolor smear. He reached his basement, the air feeling colder, emptier than usual. He sank onto his worn cot, the stolen goods from his past crimes mocking him from the dusty shelves. He had always been alone, but now, stripped of his power, he felt truly desolate. He had never been a religious man, but in that moment, a desperate plea escaped his lips. God, he whispered, his voice cracking. Forgive me. Forgive this old fool. The words felt foreign on his tongue, yet a strange, fragile hope flickered. He closed his eyes, picturing the faces of the shopkeepers, the bus passengers. The shame, a bitter bile, rose in his throat. The next morning, Leslie emerged from his basement, not for a robbery, but for a job application. He started small, sweeping floors at a local hardware store, his hands, once deft at pilfering, now calloused from honest work. He found a strange, quiet dignity in it. He started attending a small church down the street, sitting in the back pew, listening. The words, once meaningless, began to resonate. He still felt lonely sometimes, but the gnawing emptiness had receded, replaced by a nascent sense of peace. The loud, noxious farts were gone, a distant, almost unbelievable memory. Leslie, the old fart, was slowly, painstakingly, becoming Leslie, the honest man. Story by Kiyode Eek.